Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Next speaker will be Simon Polakowski, followed by Susan Schuurman, followed by Gerard Bezzeg.
Thank you, Vice President, council members. I'm a one-time producer at Channel 27 when it was run by Quote Unquote. I've been following this so-called process. I expected you public to be here this evening. I see that they're not. Last month, this chief administrative officer said that he would speak to you public about certain pending issues. I see that they're not here. I see that this has been continual. Non-performance of contract on Channel 95, non-performance on Channels 26 and 27. The mayor is supposedly a former contractor. I've worked on job sites when there's been non-performance. The subcontractor has been told to leave. You know, you're not performing, we're done, your contract is done and void, or, you know, it goes to, they're, taken to court. All we've had from this administration is a bunch of hot air and bad gas and nothing new. It's always the same. Last council meeting, Mr. Rick Metz stood here with the chief administrative officer. I found this to be very suspicious. This is an incestuous relationship between you public and the current administration, or are they Siamese twins, and do they have a hand that's in the public's purse? Because they're getting paid for nothing. $22,400 a month for producing absolutely nothing. Where do we get in line? We had a county commissioner photographed with working girls who have to perform. Obviously, if you're in with this administration, all you have to do is strut the halls of power and just show off and get paid for it. You know, this has gone on now for 7 months at Channel 26, 27, and for how many, 2 years? Yeah. 2 years. We've been jackbooted. Free speech has been jackbooted by this administration. Not only do they boot cars, but they jackboot. 2 minutes is not enough. When we had quote-unquote operating Channel 27, we had 58 minutes to voice our concerns about what's really going on
Simon,
here.
I'm sorry, but your 2-minute time limit is up. Thank you. Next speaker, Susan Schuurman. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Susan Schuurman. I'm a former producer of the New Mexico Indie Media Show on Channel 27, a former trainer at Quote Unquote, and a current board member of Quote Unquote. Better late than never. I just want to thank the City Council for beginning to ask tough questions of UPublic TV, who has the current contract to provide public access TV services. Why are nearly none of the former producers that had shows on Channel 27 on the air anymore? Why aren't high school sports on the air? Why are no shows hosted, produced, and crewed by people with disabilities? Albuquerque used to be one of 2 or 3 cities in the nation with disability-run programming. The guys from UPublic are marketing professionals. They are good at stalling and giving excuses. They will say they are setting up meetings, that they've ordered equipment, but you are all starting to see that the emperor has no clothes. UPublic is getting paid $22,000 per month to provide average citizens a chance to be on local TV. Anyone who watches Channel 27 will agree it's no longer local, and it's no longer representing the general public. If Quote Unquote ran 27 right now, I know we'd be covering the DOJ year-long investigation and the public hearings so the people of Albuquerque could be better informed about police oversight. I encourage the City Council to ask whether or not UPublic TV is fulfilling the terms of their contract. And I have a question. When does the council expect to get a report on the status of UPublic?
Thank you. Next speaker,
Mr. Vice,
Councilor Gordillo.
Mr. Vice President, Ms. Schuurman, are you saying that we should be asking for a report as to progress or non-progress or
I heard
what's happening?
at the last month, about a month ago, I thought I heard Councilor Harris ask the city to provide a 6-month update on the status of UPublic with having Channel 26 and Channel 27 contract.
And have we received that, do we know?
I've not received anything.
Well, I would encourage us, maybe staff, to ask for that. Was this promised to the council?
That was my impression. It was about a month ago, so we were expecting to hear a report from you public tonight.
Mr.
Perry?
President, when the commenters are through, I'll address the council.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Gerald Bezzeg is the next speaker, followed by Mr. Zoll, followed by Marilyn Martinez. Welcome.
Hello again. Saw you one of the last times that it was just before quote unquote got the boot for what's the name? You public. But it's Gerard Bezzeg, by the way. Anyway, I was a producer with quote unquote. I had, even if I do say so myself, but I think others will say so, I had a very popular show. It was music, and it was local musicians that nobody would ever hear. I found them on the streets playing the music. I found them in bars. I found them in cafes. I found them at my own home. Gave them a chance to get on TV. There's nothing like that now. There's not a thing. UPublic has never contacted me about anything at all. The rules that they set down were that they were going to censor us, even though they didn't use that word. I mean, everything had to go through them. It was going to cut it down to, I think, half an hour, but it all had to go through them. I was spontaneous. My show, I loved my show. I had it for 4 years. Yeah, and like Simon wanted me to mention for sure, accountability, please. I mean, what are they doing? They haven't done a thing. Quote, unquote, had it going. Just needed more help, that's for sure. Could have used a lot more help. But man, they had it going. And I really loved being on that show, being amongst all those people. UPublic, well, let me just finish by saying, there is no public in you.
Mr. Bezzeg?
Where is it?
Mr. Bezzeg, Councilor Winter has a question for you.
Oh,
Sir, so how many of your friends, you were a producer, that gentleman was a producer, are any of those guys on the show now? Are there anybody that are doing shows?
not that I know of. Not that I know
So
of.
how many of you producers were there that were doing shows on quote unquote that you know for sure that aren't doing shows with the new UPublic?
That I know for sure? Well,
Yes.
more than that.
Have you
You
ever
know,
been-
I can't.
Have you been contacted?
Oh, no, they
Have
never.
you been?
They wouldn't contact me. I spoke my mind. They
So
don't
what
like that.
happened when they took over? What did they say to you, that you weren't going to be able to do your show anymore?
Well, they said it not to me, but they never contacted me. They said, of course, to all of you, they were going to contact all the producers and get them on their side. And I never heard. And by the way, Rosemary Sanchez up there, Nani's mother, was yelling while Nani was here, telling you that they've never contacted her, and they were saying yes, yes. She said no. So who are we going to believe? Huh? Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Gerald. Mr. Zoll, followed by Marilyn Martinez. Okay, let's go on. Marilyn Martinez. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Martinez. I've been I'm the producer and the host of Channel 27. I was on the second, fourth Friday of the month, and everywhere I go to church, I go on the bus, everyone turns on the TV and say, "Oh, I know you," and they stop the TV show because they recognize me. I miss the show so much that I wish I could have it back, and I want all you guys to realize that I would like the show back pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Next speaker and last speaker will be Anthony Garcia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this time. I was also had a show on quote-unquote for 8 years, and I tried numerous of times to get on it. One time they were leasing it to other people. You know, I don't know if they're allowed to lease it, but they said they're leasing it. And then one time I finally ran into them because I went numerous of times. The doors never opened. There's no phone numbers, no contact information, no hours. And then when I finally went over there, they refused to let me do it. They told me, you got to go to the internet. And I go, well, do you have the internet here for I can do it? They go, no. So I never got to do nothing. I understand they got it rewarded for $117,000 more, and you'd figure they'd get an internet or something if they want us to do that stuff. They made everything harder where no one's allowed to be heard. And I found out our human rights and our constitutional rights is what protects the people. And I know we're all human beings, and I see this world, and I don't like what I see. And I see when Jesus was beaten and killed, everybody was saying to kill him. And then they found out the truth that he was God, because there is a God. He's kings of all kings. And no lie will live forever. And we're all people, and I don't wish nobody hell. I mean, because I believe there is a hell. And I don't want to go to hell either, and I'm no better than no individual. But I know we're all human beings, and I know the truth will set the people free. And you guys got to understand our human rights and our constitutional rights is what protects all of us. Martin Luther King said, injustice to anyone is injustice to everyone. And all we hear is about injustice because of unjust laws, unlawful laws.
Anthony, your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, but remember, Jesus sees everything. We're all going to die one day, all
Thanks.
of us.
Thank you. I know the council winner had a question, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Perry.
I think they wanted, Mr. Perry, I think let's turn to the administration. They wanted to make a comment regarding.
Let me interrupt. Whose book is that? There's somebody left a book up there. Is that one of the speakers before they leave?
Mr. President, Councilor Winter, councilors, I think it's important to understand the totality of the PEG channels. There's 4 channels. There's Channel 16, which is the government access channel. Then there's Channel 95, which is referred to as the educational channel. And there's a kind of a convergence here of misunderstanding. The contract for Channel 95 does not pay the operator any money from the city to operate the educational channel. Council may remember that back, I believe it was in 2010, we had the contract with TalNet from the University of New Mexico and some other folks to provide educational programming, and ultimately it was not funded, those 2 contracts. The educational channel, Channel 95, went black for about a year. And what happened was we tried to reinvigorate Channel 95 and, in fact, awarded that station and the educational channel component without any funds whatsoever to UPublic. There has been issues with the use of the studio to try to get it up to speed to do programming, as well as with Comcast for some of the technical issues. And then there was a policy decision. I'll talk about that in a minute. So we have 16 government access. We have Channel 95. No money being wasted on Channel 95. When we hear about it being black for 2 years, it's been black actually for 3 years. It was black originally for the first year because of the deappropriation, actually about a year and a half. And then UPublic got the contract. So it's been black for, I guess, about a year and a half. So that's those 2. Now, 26 and 27 are 2 different channels, obviously. It's public access and it's local origination, which UPublic does operate, and they have been compensated, winning a competitive award, the council may remember. And that award was for a contract of about $270,000. That has been operational since the award was done. We pay, through the legal budget, about $22,000 a month. That's correct. Only for 26 and 27, not for 95. We pay UPublic. UPublic also raises about $10,000 in funds independently each month to defray and pay down the cost. And I think their programming is pretty good. I want to touch a couple other points regarding the producers from the programming, because council was very concerned, administration was very concerned with what they had heard while this process of the contract award was going on, both the RFP, the suit by the former station management, and then ultimately the award to UPublic. We have had Mr. Metz in probably 6 times. And when I say we, I'm talking about the IPEG committee. And we continuously ask Mr. Metz about Ms. Sanchez's show, about other programmers that were on the prior stations. And he says, I have reached out to everybody. In fact, as it relates to Ms. Sanchez, I have the emails right here where I tried to contact her, and she just hasn't gotten back to us. This went on for about 2 or 3 meetings independently. And I'll let Mr. Metz speak for himself, because I think the council should be entitled to hear from him as far as his specific efforts. But generally speaking, he did produce documentation to indicate that he had reached out and had not been contacted. The other avenue of contacting local producers was by virtue of them advertising with all the former local producers that were on the former station. And again, Mr. Metz showed the efforts that he had and documented the efforts he had made. If you got on tonight onto the website that we refer to, we should probably pull a computer up, because I think it would dispel a great deal of this misconception and mischaracterization. There's a whole section that deals with producers and how to contact UPublic for production. And they make decisions on who produces and is it consistent with the programming slots they have and the content and things like that. Not regulating content. Don't want to go there. They have different blocks that are for different types of programming. So they make those decisions with the effort and I think idea to set up a better programming model. Lastly, we also heard Mr. Metz come in last week as it relates to sports programming. And we were asked, we'd like you, Mr. Metz, and ProView personnel, Mr. Haley, to get together. There was a meeting, and Mr. Torek and some other folks had a meeting, and it was a rather heated meeting. But at the end of the day, after we did our legal research, I think what's important is the very law that this very council passed. I'll read section and verse. Grant of franchise, limits and reservations, Albuquerque Ordinance, Section 13.5.3.3. Limitations on use, Section E. PEG channels shall not be used to cable cast commercial programming, paid advertising, or promotional materials unrelated to the specific programming purpose. PEG channels may not be leased or assigned to third parties. The parties do not intend to limit sponsorship announcements comparable to those that might be carried on a non-commercial broadcast, example PBS. So the whole concept of any carrier, whether it be ProView or anyone else, putting paid commercials up, and I have personally seen some of the commercials, is prohibited by the city's laws, the city's ordinances. Now what they could do, and I think what originally was proposed, was like PBS does. This programming is bought by the so-and-so foundation or a roll-up, maybe 5 minutes before a game or things like that. But that isn't particularly, I think, what the ProView model was looking to do. I mean, they have to pay for their production, their personnel and the like. And in order to do that, they needed to do some advertisements. And they had things like, wasn't there a hamburger joint and some other folks that, yeah, Hurricanes, clear commercials. These aren't, advertising for financial foundation, financial support, and the like. I'd also point out that we further drilled down on this, and we looked at Comcast because there's the franchise agreement itself. And I continuously heard that Comcast didn't have a problem with this. Of course, they're Comcast stations, and we get them pursuant to the franchise. Comcast has indicated they will not give us anything in writing that allows commercialization on their IPEG channels. Now, that all being said, we are trying to work with ProView through UPublic to try to get some of those local sports on there. I think that's a great idea. It's a great service to the community, a lot of interest from the public and the like, good programming. But that's kind of the overview of where we're at. And I think that we've exercised fairly good diligence in trying to get the PEG stations up, running, improved, and otherwise delivering services to the public.
Councilor Winter.
Mr. Perry, I understand what you're saying, but what you're saying is not what I've seen. I mean, and folks, we have producers here tonight that none of them have a show on the public access channels now, and I don't understand that. And I've talked to Rick Metz a couple times. And what I get is he's always saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it never happens. And so I'm at the point where I'm not sure who to believe. I know there's been some discussion as far as the sports stuff, but the perception I'm getting that he's putting roadblocks in front of these folks. And when we voted for that, basically this is public access, but the folks that are coming down here and speaking to us, they're the public and they're not getting access. So there's something wrong, and I'm not real sure what it is. Some lady said I was one of the votes that broke the tie. Well, I'm not real sure about my vote these days because I'm not hearing or seeing that it's working out with you public. And I'm not sure what the council can do about this, but I think we need to get involved and do something because the administration needs to do it before we do,
Yes,
and
sir.
I don't think it's happening.
Well, I think that's a fair comment, Councilor Winter, and I think some empirical data may be important to that, to the extent of let's take a look at the producers that are on UPublic right now, and let's take a look at if there's 50 producers, how many used to be prior producers and things like that. So we can do some analysis to flesh out what the true facts are. I have heard some things, in fairness to UPublic, as it relates to, well, they didn't contact me or they were going to do this and things like that. As I said, what I've been shown thus far, and notwithstanding your comments, is that they have tried to do some outreach and that there is some animosity. Some folks don't want to be working with UPublic. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I will try to develop some of that background and empirical data a little bit more.
Councilor Gordillo?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Perry, I guess this might go to you. So what we're hearing these folks say is not necessarily true, and I'm not trying to find out who's not telling the truth, because I don't know that there is a truth to be told totally. But I'm hearing folks say, I was not contacted on both sides. Both Mr. Turek, I think you said that you'd not been contacted, and the folks that have come to the microphone have said they have not been contacted. Are both sides waiting for each other to contact, or what's the problem as I see it?
Sorry, I was trying to eat a lifesaver. Caught me off guard. I thought you were going to be occupied with Mr. Perry.
Extra?
I do. It's 7 o'clock, so I might. In regards to, I have been, and the Director of Council Services, we have an IPEG meeting. Some of the stuff that I've heard in regards to Ms. Sanchez, the reason I spoke up at that time is that has specifically been asked by the administration, by the Director of Council Services of Mr. Metz. That has been raised at those IPEG meetings. He has indicated that he tried, and he never got a response, that he tried to get a hold of Ms. Sanchez. That is what I've known. From what I've seen and from what I've received in terms of emails, yeah, he has tried. Now, it was through emails. That's why I wanted the phone number, and Miss Mason has indicated, and I have said tomorrow, yeah, we're going to we will make an effort. I will make an effort with Miss Mason to contact Mr. Metz and to try and push that along. In regards to ProView, I did meet with Mr. Healy and with Mr. Metz, and Mr. Montano was there, and I listened to what Mr. Healy said. What he said, I wanted to have confirmed because we'd be in violation of the agreement in regards to having paid commercial 30-second spots. That can't happen, and he said that Comcast said it was all right. Because it's not what the ordinance allows. It's your ordinance that says we can't do that. I spoke with Mr. Healy and Mr. Metz. It didn't go too well at the time, but after it, I got an email saying that they had met in the elevator and they were going to work together and things were going to work out. Comcast will not put in writing what Mr. Healy said, though. And so that was important for him to be able to show his shows to have that. Now, in regards to what Mr. Perry said, he thought it might be acceptable to his sponsors that they say brought to you by, and then during the game, brought to you by, and then after the game, brought to you by. That might be acceptable. That would be acceptable under the ordinance and would be acceptable with the agreement. The outreach has been attempted, I believe, by UPublic, and I'm not here to cheerlead UPublic. I'm only indicating to you what we've heard during the IPEG committee meetings.
Mr. Vice President and Mr. Turek or Mr. Perry, we also heard, and I think I heard it right last time, Mr. Metz said that there would be a report about what, the status is, how many programs. I mean, that sort of thing is what I thought we were going to get this time around. Is that correct?
I would have to check back on whether that was stated, because I don't recall hearing that. If that was said, I will check with the assistant city attorney that monitors that, but I'll need to check with Ms. Mason also if she heard that.
Right.
Because I can only say to this, I did make a call to make sure that the necessary required reports were provided to us, and they were when I had checked back. Now,
Well,
I don't know about the report that was mentioned at the last council meeting.
Right.
I didn't hear that.
And I guess we could replay that to get the correct verbiage. But I would like to have a report, and I think it would be easy because they have to report status and what they're doing with the money and that sort of thing anyway?
Yes.
So we could get that.
Mr. President, Councilor Gardenia, I just need to make sure what type of report that is.
Mr. President, Councilor Gardenia, I think it's important to understand what they have to report under the contract is certain programming, what they're running for programming, how much original local programming,
Right.
how much other types of programming and breakdowns like that. That might not be the specific data that you're referring to, but I think that what we can do is try to get myself, legal, and Ms. Mason from Council Service, try to get together with Mr. Metz to get a little bit more detailed report that could address some of these producer issues, who the producers are that I've referenced before, and perhaps other important information for you. I think that'd be helpful.
I think that would be helpful for me, so thank
Councillor
you.
Harris, and then Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And it was me, I believe, who asked for that, and I believe it was the managers of UPublic who seemed very happy and almost eager to be able to present something. And I specifically didn't ask for like 2 weeks, whatever. We want to give them some time to make sure they came up with a good production and something they're comfortable with. But yeah, we'd like to see what, and it's also not necessarily something that has to follow the four corners of the project, but they are a media company and they should be able to produce something that looks good. So, maybe another month or something. I think they probably do need some time to get their operation up and running, and maybe they're only halfway along their vision for what they're going to do, but they should have made some steps, and they should be able to justify that and what they're doing with the public. I guess you call it some sort of public facility of one sort or another. So yeah, I would like to see them come here and just talk to us, let them know. And I also understand that people hate change, and then the folks who had the station changed on them and the programming changed. I mean, they're not going to like it, but I think that they still need to stand up and justify what they're doing.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, so can they simply get a list of what was on previously, and then we can see what's not on, the programs that were on? I think Councilor Winter had asked for that, so we could see what had been previously produced and what is produced now.
I think UPublic would not have a list from what, quote unquote, the prior contractor was producing. We do have some documents in that were reported, as I seem to remember, that I would receive. The detail of them was rather light, let's say, but I think that I will attempt to develop something along those lines, to take some of those prior documents, look at the particular producers, and then ask, quote unquote, and ask UPublic.
Right. I mean, I would think like they have, old program guides from quote unquote that we could get a hold of from the quote unquote people.
We
No?
don't have those, and to my knowledge, I think they were reported. I would receive them on occasion. You would think that maybe we would receive a monthly, log of what was produced and what was broadcast, and maybe other detail with it. You would think that, but it doesn't work like that. As disappointed as I am to explain to you that I don't think it has ever worked like that. And the prior contractor, quote unquote, had had that contract for I think about 25 or more years. But But I will do what I can do to try to put that historical data together.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Councilor Harris, I agree with you. We can probably give them about 30 days to get that information to us, because I think it's important. We've had a lot of people here tonight. We've had a lot of people here last week that are not real happy with what's going on, and I'd really like to find out what the number of local programming and individuals that were there before that are not there now, and why. I don't agree that they need some time to get their operation up and running. I mean, they received a contract that they are being paid $22,500 a month. They should have been up and running on day one.
And they were, sir. Within the days, they were up and activated. They had programming, and it was some of it was filler programming, not as much local origination, but I was very insistent that that be the case.
And I did hear that there was a lot of filler programs from 2-3 years ago. So we'd like to see programs that are current and, more to the time of 2013 and not programs from 2009. Let's go and get the announcements out of the way, and then we will go on to the consent agenda, and then we will adjourn for lunch.